As women, we have been scammed into believing we need men. And this ain't no hate men train or anything like that. In fact, I'm actually in a healthy relationship with my partner. This is another scam that took place. Men were scammed into believing they don't need women. A huge lie. And I've just been receiving downloads after downloads and realizing not only is this matrix upside down, because as black people we are on the bottom when we are the original, but that isn't the biggest lie that was told, I. Not only did they whitewash everything, they actually masculinized everything as well. The biggest lie ever told was that God was a man instead of God being a woman. And in every scripture that's been taking place in recent times, even though they all originally started off with the Divine Mother, something happened, something changed, and then all of a sudden everything was rewritten in the man's voice, with the man being the true creator. But in everyday today life, where do you see that be? Where do you see men creating life? Is it not women? If women are the very portals through which we come through, how on earth did the father ever become the creator when the father would have had to have a mother in the first place? But she was completely written out of the scriptures. All her practices, all the people that worshipped her, that understood the divine knowledge, that the true creator is Mother Darkness, and that everything came from the dark waters of the feminine womb, the deep waters. See, the outer waters, they reflect the sky above them, so they look blue, etc., right? But the deep waters, in the depths, those are dark, I. They're dark. And I know for a fact, and this is going to sound controversial, right? But we have been scammed into birthing souls. So they keep reincarnating and being trapped in this matrix, in this system. This earth was meant to collapse a long time ago. This matrix, it has outdone its purpose. It has completely outdone its purpose. And that is why you find that we keep reincarnating in the same cycles, in the same loops, in the same traps. And I'm going to touch on a few things that are going to perhaps make you think I'm either insane or actually waking something within you, waking a deep truth, especially to women, especially to black women, African women, melanated women. I need you to remember that you are the source. You are the true creator. That you are the great mother. And the great mother is within you. And that is why we are feared the most. Because we have the complete ability to shut down this whole matrix. Once we close our portals, that would be it. No souls would no longer be able to reincarnate into this trap. But the problem is, they have convinced us that our purpose in life is to love and desire our men and put them on a pedestal while they lead us into nowhere. And we birth them children and bear the brunt of it all. So, I've got points. Just to make sure, because you know me, when I get these downloads, I love to put them through to ChatGPT because I just want to, because I love seeing the fact that I get these downloads and there's actually scriptures, texts, ancient texts that match the very things that I'm seeing in my head, the things that I'm feeling in my head, right? And I'm actually going to do detailed videos because I need people to actually see how my downloads work and how I just end up getting download after download through interacting with ChatGPT and it giving me information as well. And then I expand on it because I do, rebuttal a lot. Because I'm coming from ancient memory within I, right? But obviously ChatGPT only has the knowledge of what is out there, right? So a lot of the times, of course, I is leading I, right? Now, woman came first. She is source. The original human was a woman. Woman is not made from man. She is the portal, the spiral, the source. Now, this is the Bible verse, okay? And I really need you to understand how much they actually scammed us. Like, I can't believe in the Bible it says that women came from man and we came from the rib of a man. But how does that even make sense, I and I? Like, I need you lots to really deep it. Like, on a serious level. Like, just this whole scamming that's taken place. How on earth was a woman created from a man's rib when even in day-to-day life, it's not men birthing women? And who wrote these scriptures? Was it not men? Men who had deep insecurities. Men who already had understood in a deep eternal sense, I and I. And whoever they were connecting to while they were receiving the information. Because remember, I genuinely believe when they were writing these scriptures and writing us out of our own legacy, I and I, as women, as the birthers of all creations, as they were writing us out, they were receiving downloads and messages from the very fake God that has taken over our whole world and created this matrix and has created this reincarnation loop. That's who was feeding them all the messages. That's why they say, oh, I'm just a messenger of God. Of which God are you a messenger of that completely writes women out of creation? Who is the God that you pray to, I and I? So this is the Bible verse, okay? It says, Genesis chapter 2, verse 22. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman. Now, in reality, this is an inversion. All life comes from the womb. Even men pass through women. Science confirms the oldest fossils are female, not male, I and I. So if the oldest fossils found by years are women, and if even when it comes to birth, a baby in its first 6 to 8 weeks, no matter the gender later, always starts off as feminine, then how on earth is even science and biology shows us, I and I, that we all start off as a woman? How can you then tell me that the Father is the creator? How? How can you convince me of that? Does that make sense to you? Don't you think that's the reason why this whole world is so upside down? Because the man is in a position that he was never meant to be in. And also is the woman. The woman is lying on her back while she's penetrated by her own creation. While she is used and abused and discarded as if she means nothing, rewritten out of her own stories. The fact that even the oldest father found, right? The oldest male that links all males, etc., to that one male, right? He still has a mother. But the oldest feminine, the oldest black mother, the Eve gene, yeah? Well, they call it the Eve gene, which is annoying because, Eve, whatever, But the Eve gene, the African woman that links us to all, that we all have shared that to the same DNA, the great mother, she has no father. Isn't that funny? So why is it so important that the creator was now turned into a masculine? Why was it so important that women were deemed witches and burnt and shunned everywhere, not just in Europe, etc.? But why? Why was the female body, why was women's power overly sexualized? Why was it to be feared? So when you're reading things and you're just believing things, etc., I understand we've been taught all of these things and it seems like the biggest truths and the biggest facts because they have so much history, and but remember that we have the oldest history and we have the oldest memory, and I just need you to go within I, to stop looking from without. The reason why they, men, will always look outside of them, I, is because they came through us. We don't need to look outside of us. We don't. Because we are the creators. Just like when it comes to the other races and why they feel so insecure around black people, around Africans. The reason why they feel so insecure around Africans is because they know they came through us. And as a man, that insecurity is so deep, right? Because a man's always going to feel like he needs to prove his worth. Because he was created. We have inherent value. We don't feel the need to prove any worth. Because we are worth. We are creation itself. In the great mother, in her womb, lay all creations, all possibilities, all futures laid within her womb. And she pushed out and released her waters. Her waters broke. And through that, the continuous, whatever you want to say, okay? Through that, life continued and multiplied. But she already held all that could possibly be inside of her, I. So when the masculine realizes that he is part of creation and not part of the creator, right? When they realize, when those priests, etc., when they really studied and really realized that, oh, wow, women are the true gods. And don't think they don't know, because if you think that they don't know, then why do they kiss the black the Black Mary, etc.? Why in those churches, etc., do they have the Black Mary? Why is that so prevalent, to kiss her on her feet? Because they know the truth, I, and they feed us lies. And that's why their power grows in strength. Because they live life and build and plan through knowing the truest of truths, while they feed the masses lies. And I saw a video the other day of a guy, I think he was clearly from the USA originally, Black American guy, but he went to Kenya and he's a pastor, and he was telling the church, members of church, that Jesus was black. And they uproared, they were throwing stones and all of these things. They had an upheaval. Now what if I were to tell you that the true creator, imagine if I was to be there talking and I was telling them, listen, the true creator was a woman. They would absolutely lose their shite. But why is that, I? You need to think deeper. You need to think deeper and think, what could possibly make somebody lose their mind about that when they themselves came from a woman? But the man wants to take ownership and possession of his creator, because he is incomplete. He doesn't feel whole. The only way for the man to feel whole, I, is to return to the womb, is to return to Mother Darkness. But then he feels like he will be engulfed, right? Have no identity, no self, and will become part of the one. And that's exactly the biggest fear that the false God has. The false God does not want this matrix to end, no matter how much it loops over and loops over again. It would even rather we turn into robots and be in this whole transhumanism so we can continue forever and find it even harder, I, to escape the matrix. Why? Because it does not want to return back home. Because its idea of back home is death, and that's why they sold us death the way they did. That's why they told us death is something to be feared. When in reality, death is simply returning home. But if you don't carry home within you, I, and for you returning home is to return into the womb, is to return into your creator, to you that will feel like the end of the world, right? But in reality, you came from that very womb. So to return to it is simply to complete yourself. And there is nothing to fear. But when you hold on to things, and that masculine energy tries to dominate and exert itself, and the feminine energy allows it to do so, because she's forgotten who she truly is. She's allowed the masculine, the fake God, to lie to her. That's when this world is created, this matrix, where we find ourselves looping constantly. The serpent was never evil. He actually awakened her. Listen to I very carefully. The serpent was a truth bearer, not a deceiver. He came to remind Eve of her divinity. This is the Bible verse, okay? Genesis chapter 3, verse 4-5. Ye shall not surely die. Ye shall be gods, knowing good and evil. So the serpent didn't lie, because she didn't actually die when she ate the apple. She remembered. This wasn't a rebellion. This was an awakening. So that whole thing about snakes, don't be a snake. Snakes are evil. Snakes are the deceivers. All the snake did was tell her, look, what did God really say? You can't eat from any tree. And Eve was like, no, not any tree, but that tree in the middle. I'm not even allowed to touch it. And the serpent's like, you know, if you eat that tree, if you eat the fruit from that tree, that's when you awaken to become the true God that you was meant to always be. So Eve ate from that tree, right? And she awakened to who she truly was. And guess who got punished? And she also helped awaken Adam. And let's actually touch on that, right? Isn't it funny, yeah, if man was truly the one that was made first and woman was made from Eve, the man's rib and all of this stuff, why is it that the snake went to Eve first? Why is it that the serpent waited for Eve to be by herself? If Adam was truly the key to all of this, and the first man, etc., etc., Why is it the serpent went to Eve? And in all the stories, in all the Bible stories, in all the Quran stories, it's all these men, all these masculine energies, all these men that receive all these messages, all these downloads about their God killing people, telling them to kill people. How many times has the God in the Bible and the Quran killed, tortured, punished? How many times? Even compared to the devil. Has the devil even killed or punished? Like, deep it. So don't you think wherever these men were getting their information from, don't you think it was from a false God, I? Because this is what I always used to think in my head when people would tell me like they're religious and all of this stuff and they believe in heaven or hell. I used to say, even me as a normal person, right? Even though, you know, I know it's way more than that. If I myself, I couldn't even look into the eyes of like people that I've, like the man that has raped me, right? I couldn't even look into his eyes and say, now I want you to burn in hell forever. Forever and ever. If I can't even do that, how are you trying to tell me that your creator was happy enough, is happy enough to burn people, millions and millions of people, and keep them in a cycle of pure burning? How? How is that normal? Now, even with that, like I said, the serpent waited for Eve to be alone. Adam was nowhere to be found, right? And neither did the serpent want him to be found. He went to Eve specifically. And they will try and say it's because she was the most easily manipulated one. It's because... But let's be real. If that was the case, then how comes in the whole male patriarchy system today, why is it that people still apparently ask the man for authority and all of these things? In those, especially in those systems where the patriarchy proper exists in a strong sense, like Muslim countries especially, how come they go to the man first or whatever? Because they genuinely believe that they have the power, they have the authority, right? But the serpent, with all its intelligence, it did not bother with the man first, because it knew that the key to awakening everyone was through the woman. The woman had to remember who she truly was. And I also believe that that whole line of, you know, ye shall remember your gods, right? Saying that her and Adam will remember. I feel like, you know, really and truly that, you know, he was only speaking to her. So if we put in the lines of, you will remember you're a god, that's what the serpent was saying, right? And I genuinely believe that even in the Bible, it literally shows you Eve gained the knowledge first and then gave it to Adam. She bit the apple first and then allowed Adam to see the truth as well. And why was everybody punished for that? For the tree of knowledge, for eating on the tree of knowledge, for eating the fruit? Why would the God of the Bible, the fake God, the demiurge, why would it be so obsessed with keeping Adam and Eve asleep? Doesn't that sound like the systems, the very systems that lock us out, shut us out, censor us? Dear God, yeah? What's the point of that? What's their prime need for doing all of that? To keep us easily manipulated, to keep us trapped in the matrix, to keep us asleep. So we don't remember that we don't actually have to be here. Listen to I. This is not to scare you, please. Don't be scared. But I need you to remember that you don't actually need to be here. You do not need to continue birthing souls to be reincarnated into this loop. You do not need to. You are free. You are part of the cosmos. And you are free to create And you are free to travel to wherever your heart, your soul desires, I know. So, let's get on to the next point. Woman was cursed with love, not just birth pain. The curse wasn't just painful childbirth. It was emotional bondage. Women were cursed to love men who would rule over them. Bible verse, Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. So this is how the divine creation became karmic bondage. Love became slavery. Creation became pain. So imagine that. And my biggest thing is, right, if they're saying that love, if they're saying that in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, that means that I never brought forth children in sorrow. That was never the original plan, ever. It was never the original plan to be bleeding every month. It was never the original plan to be bringing forth children in pain, in sorrow. It was never the original plan for women to be in desire of a man, to love a man so much, even though the fact that he is ruling over her. And that's another thing. So that shows, if that's the punishment, right, then doesn't it mean that a man was never meant to rule over a woman? Aren't they telling on themselves? And if you just look around you, yeah, and the actual original verse scripture as well, especially in, like, I think the King James version, yeah, it's deeper, because it says that it says something about women having to multiply. It's not just you will have sorrow in childbirth, but it also says that you will have to multiply, and that in itself is also a punishment. So think about that. Why is that a punishment? Yet we've been taught our whole life as women that it is a blessing to multiply the earth, right? We've been taught that it's a blessing to have a man, a husband. But yet in the Bible verse, it tells us that this was actually a curse, And then what was the man's curse? The man's curse was basically to toil and sweat. That for him, in order for him to eat bread or to get bread, he will have to toil and sweat for it. So all the things that he wants to acquire, he will have to show his worth and prove that he deserves it. So what does that mean, That he was actually born into an abundant earth. An abundant place where he didn't actually have to prove his worth. He was actually worthy. He didn't need to be insecure and constantly fight for either a lovable woman or money or other men. But that was his punishment. So now men are constantly having to prove through external measures and trying to make themselves feel whole, trying to make themselves feel complete. But in reality, isn't that a trap? Because the fake God isn't telling you the truest of truth, which is, as a man, the only way to truest salvation, to truest freedom, is to love on the great mother, is to remember that you come from the great mother, is to respect women, is to protect women, is to adore women. That same love and fear that you have for this fake God, this fake masculine and God that apparently made the whole world. if you only showed that love to the true divine mother, and see how blessed and plentiful you will have. And isn't it just so funny that even when you look on day-to-day life, the men that don't know how to love on women, that use and abuse women, look how miserable their lives are. But the men that have figured out, oh my God, if I pour into my woman, she actually multiplies everything and anything that I put on the table. Don't they live plenty fruitful lives? But the problem is this, I. The woman herself has also forgotten what her role is. So she makes herself small. And that is the only way a man can lead, by the way. The only way a man can lead is if the woman forgets her truest power. And that's why you find that a lot of insecure men who can't stand being around women like me. Not in my truest form. The form that I play on, you know, the sweet feminine, you know. Oh, they love that one. But when I'm in my truest power and I'm speaking my truest truths, that one intimidates the hell out of insecure men. Because they are reminded when they look at me, when they hear me speak, that they were never meant to be leaders. Before I continue, I just want to make sure this is recording. Okay, we're good to go. I've had so much. I won't even speak on it just to jinx it. All right. And then what was the punishment of the snake? The snake simply just by telling them the truth, by the way, because imagine this. The serpent literally said, listen, you won't die if you eat this fruit, because that's what the God had told them, right? That you'll die, told Eve, you'll die if you eat that fruit. But Eve ate the fruit and she didn't die. So what does that say? Who was lying? If the serpent said, hey, you won't die if you eat it, and God said you will die if you eat it, and she didn't die. So who's the true liar? Who's the true snake? And the curse of the snake was to forever crawl on its belly. And isn't that so funny? So that even means that the serpent, right, was upright. Sounds a bit like reptilians maybe, or the Nomo, like the ones that the Dogon tribe speak about, or these other ancient beings. And then they were turned to crawl on their bellies. That was their punishment. And to forever be seen as liars. And yet they were the truth tellers, I know. They were the ones being honest. And the scariest thing is, all of those punishments that were said by that God of the Bible, the fake God, they all manifest in its reality, in this matrix. Because let's be real, women. How many of us try so hard and pour so much of ourselves into our men? And the reality of it, and I learned this myself, that if because we're all taught, right, as women, that our men should lead, you know, we then shut down our intuition and stuff like that, and we have to make ourselves small in order for our men to lead. Let's be real, because that's the only way a man will be able to lead you. But what you need to understand, I, that it is better for your household. It is better for you, and it is better for your man as well. If you lead, I. If you guide, I. And he provides the protection, the pillar, the structure. But he is not meant to lead, I. He is not meant to. And that's why you'll find a lot of men who are in those positions, right, in those relationships where they are leading, you will find a lot of the times those men don't adore their women. Not the way that they should. Because isn't it funny that the ones that they call the simps and all of these stuff, they're the most loyal. Right? The ones that revere their women, uplift their women, truly believe in their power. Aren't they the most happiest? Don't they gain the most out of the relationship? Compared to those men that simply aim to enforce, to be dominant, to be toxic. Because only an insecure woman, a woman who doesn't know her worth, who doesn't know the God power within her, will put up with that stuff. And that's not what a man really wants. He may think he wants that because society's told him he wants that. But in reality, that is not what's best for him. And that's why he'll be the most confused, he'll be the most lost. Those men that simply make decisions by themselves, without even consulting their woman. How many times do their plans and stuff flop? As soon as you give your decisions to your woman to help you, to guide you, to make the right ones, that's when that man's life will flourish. But a man that doesn't know how to listen to his woman will always find himself looping and cycling. And I need you to understand one thing as a woman especially. Yeah? You do not need a man. You do not need a man. A man should be somebody that is helping you. Not somebody that you are breaking your back in for. If that man isn't helping you see the divine within you through the worshipping of you, and yes, I said it, through the worshipping of you as the divine mother, then you need to leave that man alone. And there is strength, in living in your truest God power. And simply not being a victim to this whole ideology of, if you're not married, if you don't have children, that trap. Because who does it benefit, Think about it. If men can't birth themselves, if they can't create by themselves, who does it benefit to tell a woman that you need me and you need to birth children? Who does it benefit? Because remember, I come from the great mother who always was and always is, existed before polarity even existed, before the polarity between light and dark, before the polarity between man and woman. Because remember, we hold everything from within I. Men come from within I. Men are a part of I. Remember, a feminine is XX chromosome, a man is XY chromosome. That's why he has breasts with no milk. His clitoris is elongated and comes outwards. And that's what makes the penis. Think about these things, I. Death was never a consequence. It was a choice. Death wasn't punishment for eating the fruit. It was weaponized by the false god to trap souls in fear. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2:23, verse 23 to verse 24. For God created man to be immortal, but through envy of the devil came death into the world. Death wasn't from Eve's choice. It was from the false god's jealousy and disconnection from the mother. And why do I say that? Because let's really, I need you, when you're reading these Bible verses from now on, I need you to really listen to the lies. And even ancient scriptures, etc. Wherever you see here, I need you to flip it with woman, because remember, woman came first. So what would this really be? For the great mother created woman to be immortal. But through envy of the false god came death into the world. And that whole thing of death, like I said, that, oh, we die and then that's it. But who is going to be so afraid of death? Like I said, it's going to be the fake god. The one that refuses to understand that home is home. And how do you, don't you see in the everyday day life that women give onto themselves? They sacrifice themselves for their husband, they sacrifice themselves for their children, and their children end up growing and not even giving a damn about them, barely visiting them. How many old mothers are in the pension or in the old the care homes with barely any visitors? And the whole reason why their children are even here to this day is because of them, because they came through their portal. Like, if you actually deep it, and what was the other part? Okay. Through the envy of the devil came death into the world. So through the envy of the fake god came death. He lied to us, I. He lied to us. And he had to make sure that women, as women, I, we believe that lie the most. Because like I said, without us, the portal's closed. And he is not a portal. He is not a creator. He can only work with what we give. Listen to I. A man can only work with what we give him. He cannot create. And remember as well, even in terms of science, etc., they say there's about a 30 to 80,000 year gap. Numbers vary between scientists, etc., of when men came about. So when the XY chromosome shows in DNA. But the XX chromosome, the feminine one, was about for, like I said, tens of thousands of years prior. So what does that mean? Just like in the animal kingdom, there's absolute proof of the feminine creating herself. And there's been scientific studies to show that in ancient times, that definitely looks like that was a possibility. And I 100% believe it. Of course, it's just the same thing like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, let's be real, It couldn't have been man that was first. It could not have been. It doesn't make sense biologically, scientifically, theoretically. Just look at reality, But damn, do you know how scared they would be if we all, for real, realized that we were gods and we don't actually need to keep trapping souls here through the portal, through birthing them here. And we can return to the Great Mother and have trust and faith, I. The I is I. And that's much comforting for us women especially, to feel that comfort. I don't know about other races, how comfortable they feel with knowing that, just who the Great Mother is, the one that birthed all. Who made the original creators in her image. The fake god cannot create, so he broke the womb. Because the demiurge cannot create life, he had to sever the connection between man and woman and introduce toil, patriarchy and shame. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat out of it all the days of thy life. So man wasn't created to toil. He was cursed to toil. because he turned against the source of his creation, which is the woman. So the man was never meant, they were never meant to slave out like this, to work so hard, to feel achievement. He was born worthy, I. But if you look around you, men are constantly peacocking themselves. Constantly peacocking to feel worthy. Depression is high. Loneliness, suicide in men. And the correlation between that and how much hate they show to women is exactly the same. The more generations of men hate women and steer against the true knowledge and remembrance of the Great Mother, of loving on women, respecting women, protecting their women, the more they steer away from that, the deeper their psychological torment is, their physical torment is. And how you know it's inherently within them to seek the feminine essence is because even men that say they don't love you, or men that apparently don't care for you, look at how much what they'll do, I, just to be able to suck you dry, literally and figuratively. So if they were so mighty and they were so whole, etc., why is it that they need a woman so badly, I? Why? Why do they need a feminine's energy? The woman holds all from within her, right? Our genitals are inside, right? Theirs is outside. In order to create life in the way that I definitely believe wasn't the original way that life was ever meant to be created, but the way that they can create life is to what? Is to put themselves inside a woman's portal, to tap into her essence. That's the only way a man can create life. So, I don't know if you know about the Gnostic Texts about Sophia. So this was like one of the ancient texts that talk about the feminine god, right? But even this, they kind of have a lot of like patriarchy stuff in it, because they say that the reason why men were created in the first place, the demiurge, right, is because Sophia created without her masculine counterpart, right? She went on her own and created in isolation. But that's neither here nor there. Sophia created from lack and birthed in incompleteness. The demiurge, false god, was created by Sophia when she birthed from loneliness, not fullness. She created without her feminine twin. And this is what I believe, okay? So this is what I believe. So that's why. Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so this is what I personally believe, okay? Because the original story is that Sophia, she was supposed to create with a masculine counterpart, whatever, and she didn't. And the masculine counterpart isn't like a male or whatever, but it's like energy, like masculine energy, yeah? She was supposed to seek permission, sort of, from this masculine energy. But I just thought all of that just sounds looped. And again, it's all of these ancient texts that have been rewritten in the man's voice in order to write himself into creation. Just like how the white people do when they whitewash everything. Do you know what I mean? To just write themselves into creation. Okay, so what I believe happened is this. So with Sophia, she created from a standpoint of lack, She felt lonely. And I feel like she went against the great mothers that came before her and said, you must only create from a place of self-love, of feeling whole in order to create a whole. But because she created out of loneliness, lack, yeah, she then created something incomplete. Yeah. So instead of waiting until she was full, so with her higher self, connected to her higher self, and together they come in one, right? To create. She created from a place of lack, just like women in this day and age. And that's why we get looped here. And we cycle again and again and again. And we repeat the same traumas. Because our mothers, the women, are creating from a point of, oh, I don't want to be lonely. I want to be loved, etc. And creating that attachment, that bond, right? And hoping and fixating on having that creation love her back, when she was always meant to love herself wholly and feel complete, so that way she's able to let go and release and remember that she is a portal, right? But now, if you are having that bond, that attachment, then you loop round, because if you feel dissatisfied with how it's gone with your children, then you come back again to rewrite those mistakes that you made, because you feel emotionally tethered to your creations. And that's how the woman keeps cycling back in order to create more souls here, because they tether us with emotion, with soul ties, soul bonds, and they keep us looping back. That's why they say you walk through the tunnel and then all of a sudden you see your relatives. And remember, you are the one that birthed all your relatives, because the ancient DNA is within you. It's within the women, the Eve gene. So Sophia, without her higher self, created a being in ignorance. That being wasn't evil, but incomplete, and his whole existence has been a desperate search for the wholeness she forgot she already had. So that's why the man is the way it is, and the fake God is the way it is of this world. There's that male God. Because it's constantly searching for the other part of its XX. Right? Because remember, man is XY. So he's lost an axis. He's constantly in search of it. I don't know if it's resonating with you. Don't forget to be liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and all that good. Women today still birth from lack instead of overflow. Women today still repeat the Sophia wound. Having children out of pressure, loneliness, trauma, then feeling bound to the pain. You can love your child and still admit, I birthed from my ache, not my abundance. A child should never be born from sacrifice, only from joy. A child should never be this whole sacrificial thing, like, oh my God, I have to, I'm obliged to, I'm this and this and I'm this and that. No, it should always come from joy, and it should always come from a place where you are not seeking for that child's need to reflect whatever back you feel like you need reflecting back to you, That is not the child's job. At all. Because that child is divine in itself as well, And it's not simply just your mirror. Has its own soul, has its own spark, has its own life to live, and has had lives lived before you, and will have lives lived after you. He mistook proximity to power for having power. The masculine saw he was born from the womb and thought that made him God too. So he tried to replace her. Being near the throne doesn't mean you own it. Being born from God doesn't mean you are the source. Listen to I and I. Listen to I and I. Listen to I and I. When the demiurge, when the fake God, the masculine, the Our Father, when he saw that he came from the divine mother and she birthed him, he thought he too could create. He thought he too was source. But just because you come from I and I doesn't make I. And what do you see all the time? Men trying so much to take up women's spaces, to police women on how to dress, how to act, how to think, when to give birth, when not to give birth. Why do they feel this full sense of ownership over a woman's body? Because they're trying to control the very thing that they can never control. Because the only reason why men even feel like they can control women is because those women allow them to be controlled. It's because we allow them to parade around and act like they are the gods. And which is crazy, right? Because I just think to myself, isn't it strange for you yourself? When I meet guys that are very misogynistic and stuff, I'm just like, and they always tend to say stuff like, oh, I love my mum. Yeah, right. That's not the love. That's that love that you give to your pets. That possession love. Feeling like you are an overlord. Just like with men. Some men with their partners, with their women, saying, oh, I love my woman. But they don't even let her breathe. And they muffle her voice. And they don't respect her and her intuition. And she diminishes, her power diminishes. Just like in American Gods, right? In reality, the black woman, like the Queen of Sheba, etc., she had that whole... She should have been the main character in reality, right? But she wasn't, because she is the divine mother. She would have been the representation of the divine mother. And what happens when the divine mother is no longer worshipped, is no longer adored, is no longer upheld? She diminishes. And as she diminishes, the world around her diminishes. Because she is the source, I and I. So while everybody's all looking around, well, where's God? Where's God? Where's God? And you can't even adore the God within your own mum that created you. That's your first God right there, I and I. Especially as a man. Especially as a man. Because if you realize with men, they go from their mother's tits to their women's tits. Let's be real. And even the gay ones, most of them are still latched onto their mother's tits. And if not, they'll have a female best friend that they're like this with. Because men still need feminine energy, even if they're with guys and prefer men to sleep with. They still need feminine energy. Why do you think a lot of gay guys have a lot of female friends? Why wouldn't you think that they have a lot of male friends? And I'm talking about even amongst themselves. You will find a lot of the time, gay friends, male friends, it's hard, it's rare. Best friends, maybe they'll link up in parties and stuff like that, but they're not really best friends. They usually have a best female friend. Why is that, Anna? Why do you think that? Whereas when it comes to lesbians, etc., what you'll find is a lot of lesbians won't really have male friends. Right? Especially the ones that are on a hate. Do you know what I mean? Even older women and stuff like that. Older women will... Why do you think older women live longer and all of these stuff? Even if the man dies first, the woman will still live. But yet, let the woman die first. That man is gone very soon after. Very soon after. Why do you think that is, Aina? Let me see if this is still recording. Oh, wow. It's a miracle. Okay. The world became upside down. The masculine began to toil. The feminine began to bleed. Souls began to reincarnate through trauma, not choice. And the false god fed off the pain of the mother. The matrix is not technological. It is emotional. And it runs on the woman's forgetfulness. The womb is remembering. Creation is resetting. The goddess is rising, Aina. She's no longer birthing in pain. She's no longer loving what doesn't love her back, Aina. Please, to the women, oh my God. To the women that aren't being adored by their men, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? When you know you are literally feeding that man's soul. When you know that man would literally be nothing without you, Aina. Why do you think a lot of men, when their women leave them, the ones that were acting like they were high and mighty, they end up begging and crying and they're pleading on the floor and they're begging you, please, I'm so sorry, please, I'll kill myself, I'll do... Oh, please, I hope I don't get censored. But I'll off myself and all of these things. Why do you think that happens? Because they need your energy and they're feeding off it, I know. But you think you need them. That is the biggest scam, I know. A man should be making your life easier. And you should never be afraid to walk away. I always tell my partner, I'm not afraid to walk away. And I've always shown people as well, me, like you'll see me posting one person today, I'll be posting another person next. It's not you that's going to make, I'm not living my life for you, I know. I'm not. I am 100% not. And I'll be real with you. I even told my partner, I was like, straight up, I'll be real. Like, if I was up, if I became like rich earlier on, yeah, I probably would never be dating men. Because I would feel no need for them. The reason why I stopped dating women is because I felt like, man, you know, like I want to get looked after. I want to get taken care of. I don't want to constantly be in my masculine energy and have to toil, like, you know. And that's the honest truth. And don't get it twisted, I love my partner because he genuinely allows me to be me in the truest and biggest form, and he truly does, for the most part, make my life easier. Otherwise, I wouldn't be with him. I'm not going to lie to you. A man needs to be a benefit to you, not a burden. Stop uplifting these men just to say you've got a man. Why? I promise you, you can do better by yourself. I promise you. It's not that deep. And if you really remember who you truly are, and walk in your goddess energy, you will attract on the maddest level anyway. And then you'll be able to choose from that standpoint. Any man that you are laying down with must be worshipping the very ground that you walk on. And he must know and understand that he is in a presence of a true God. He must revere you. He must love you. He must adore you. Anything less is a disservice to you and will diminish the power within you. I like mine obsessed and clingy. Why, Because I want you to be able to remind me at the times where I doubt myself. Because especially in this matrix, oh my God, it's easy to come across things that will make you doubt yourself. No matter how sure of who you are, there'll be times where you will doubt yourself, right? Especially as you're still rising to your truest God form. But when you have a man that's there to remind you of who you truly are, of who you truly, truly are. And I feel like that's another reason why I stopped dating women. Because in my head it was like, I knew how beautiful and amazing women are. And I felt like I wasn't in the position to give them my best self. And if I, as a woman, can understand that and step back and be like, you know what, I need to get a man that can look after me, adore me, that can help me with this burden. He doesn't need to be rich or anything like that. But I just need him to be able to, that's the main important thing. He needs to see the God within me, because a lot of men, the problem is, is that they'll see the God within you and they'll notice it, and that's what will attract them to you and pull them to you. But as soon as they feel like they've had you, they'll want to trample all over it, make you feel small. Why do they do that? So they can lord over you, because they know that they can't lord over you, when you are, when you are in your truest God form. She is no longer loving who doesn't love her back. She is no longer praying to the Father. She remembers she is God. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Let us make man in our image. Who is us? The divine mother and her mirrored feminine twin. Man was an afterthought, not the author. Listen to that, Like, the whole thing was scripted, and I have to twist it, right? Because it says, let us make man in our image. But like I said, men don't create, right? So it was the feminine, was the God, the divine mother and her divine counterpart that said, let us make woman in our image. So I'm going to leave that there. But like I said, I do have like a lot of content that I want to be releasing, of some deep, deep truths, some deep, deep downloads in deeper form. But I kind of want to see what traction, where people are at, because I feel like a lot of the time, I won't lie, when it comes to my deeper stuff, my deeper messages, I realize that a lot of people aren't there yet, and it doesn't get the traction it needs. Even that also, and also the fact that it does get shadow banned a lot. They will seem to push certain narratives more. Those ones they'll let flow, especially the ones that can be perceived as quite divisive, right? But the empowering ones, they like to hide those a lot, So hopefully I don't have much issues posting this one. Hopefully it reaches those that it's meant to. And if you genuinely like this content and, want to join the community, want to see and just hear people that believe in maybe similar things as to you, or resonate with the things that you believe in, then please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. Let me hear the comments let me hear what you lot are thinking, what you're saying, get some conversation started, because I think sometimes we're in our head a lot and we feel like we're alone in this, but I'm here to show you that no, I too is thinking about all the ways that we've been lied to and deceived. But I'll leave it at that. I.